Hello, everyone. How are you doing? I hope you are having a wonderful day or a morning or an afternoon, wherever you happen to be watching and listening in from today. We've got a couple of minutes until we officially go live. So we have opened up the broadcast and we'll just do a quick tech test, actually. Luckily, we have Krystal with us. We have not Greg Gifford with us, which actually completely flummoxed me when I was trying to bring Greg on screen, because I wouldn't know whether some sort of wisecracker was pretending to be Greg, whether it was actually Greg pretending not to be Greg. But I managed to figure it out. I managed to use all my smarts to work out it was the real Greg Gifford. So great to see people have found and making use of the sort of text chat down the right-hand side. Let us know if you can hear me and see me, if I'm coming through okay. And then Greg, if you'd like to say something, and Krystal, if you could say something as well, we'll just make sure that everyone is seeing us and hearing us correctly.
Awesome. Yes, Krystal, I'm here from San Diego. I see lots of people are putting in their locations.
Yep, I'm here too. I'm from Dallas, or outside of Dallas. So we're kind of spreading the gamut between Brighton and Dallas and San Diego.
We are indeed, and I think we're probably pretty much sort of filling in every town and city in between, looking at the likes where everyone is listening in from. Firstly, great to see so many people back on the webinar again. We've had almost 850 registrations for this one, which is great, but that is not surprising given the topic of local ranking factors, which is always a good one, and of course given the pedigree of our guests as well. So we're actually on the hour, so why don't we get started? I'm just going to share a quick slide deck. But before I jump into that, actually, the more eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that we're running a poll at the start of the webinar. The poll is kind of in the middle of your screen at the bottom, just trying to kind of gauge essentially the sense of the audience in terms of how much people look at sort of studies and SEO research to help kind of guide the work that they do on behalf of their clients, or if they're in-house on behalf of the company they work for. We're going to just analyze the results of that very quickly with Greg and Krystal in a minute. So you've probably got 2 or 3 minutes to jump on and do that poll. So if you could do that, that would be great. Hang on, I've just seen that Neil says that his connection is frozen. Other people saying that it looks okay to them. All right, I'll keep a beady eye on that. But yeah, please just do jump to the poll, because we're going to talk about it. That actually helps us, I guess, kind of gauge the audience's sense of usage of things like local ranking factor study to influence the work that they do. So firstly, just not sure how many of you know about how BrightLocal works. We actually have a very big part of our operation in Ukraine. That's where the majority of our software development team are based. We've been working with Ukrainian developers for probably over 10 or 11 years now. And I've had an office there for the last 10 years. I've had the pleasure to go and visit Ukraine many times, meet our team members, meet some of their families, spend a lot of time working closely with them, but also building up strong kind of close relationships. So we're clearly standing with Ukraine in the crisis that they're kind of going through. I've sent out a couple of emails, which some of you may have read, and I've been delighted with the response I've got. So thank you to anyone who took the time to respond to me, or took the time to kind of donate, or who's doing anything to show solidarity with what's going on in Ukraine at the moment. We'd also like to say that our team are currently well and safe, which is great news. We're making provisions for them in the west of the country. Some have also crossed the border into Poland. And actually, as of this week, the UK has opened up its visas to allow Ukrainians to come to the UK. So we're doing what we can do to help team members, families, and even their friends connect with host families in the UK, so that they can move over here and potentially rebuild new lives, or at least get away from the horrendous war that's wrecking their country at the moment. There's more to come from us on that point, but we have recolored all the slides for this webinar to kind of show our solidarity with Ukraine, and you'll notice my Ukrainian flag in the background. So just so you understand the context of why the slides look a little bit different and what it means to me personally, but also to all my colleagues at BrightLocal. So we have an excellent webinar sort of brought to you over the next 90 minutes, essentially looking at local ranking factors and how and when to follow the data for best results. We're joined by 2 of my most favorite people, not just in the world of local SEO, but in general, 2 very long in the tooth marketers and SEOs. I will let them introduce themselves, because they'll do a far better job of it than I will. But first and foremost, we have Krystal Taing from Uber. So Krystal, over to you just to give a quick introduction.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Miles. Thanks for having us. So everyone, I am Krystal Taing. I currently run our solutions engineering team at Uberall for the Americas. And essentially, I've been in local search for over a decade, seeing how things have changed, primarily with a focus on enterprise and scaling, those strategies that maybe you take from a single location and try to apply it to tens or hundreds or thousands, and navigating the fun, world of Google guidelines and processes. So that's really kind of my background, and I'm excited to be here to talk about all things local search ranking factors with you all.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Krystal. Thank you so much for giving us your time today and for joining us on one of our webinars again. And over to Greg Gifford from Search Lab.
So, hey guys, I'm Greg Gifford. I actually just learned local SEO like 6 weeks ago, so I'm not really sure why Miles wanted me to be on here. I'm just kidding. I've been in local search for over a decade as well. Outside of COVID, typically speak at conferences all over the world, do fun videos and stuff like that. For a long time, I was automotive exclusive, so we only did SEO for car dealers. Where I work now, I'm the vice president of search at Search Lab, and we do local SEO for any business that needs local SEO. So yeah, you've probably seen me. I think we can go right to the next slide, right? Talking about my course. Yes, I have a new course on BrightLocal. It is a beginner's guide to local SEO. So it's like 3.5, 4 hours long. It's a really long course, but it's free. Go take it. It's awesome. Mainly because I'm the one giving it, but also because it's packed with awesome information. So go check that out. I like to help people out and do courses like this all over. So go check it out for sure. I've got a link building or local link building course that will be coming out soon as I finish filming that as well.
So Greg, thank you very much for all that you're doing for us at the moment, obviously on today's webinar, but also the Academy as well. I actually thought it was around 90 minutes. At least that's what we kind of advertised it as. So,
oh yeah, maybe it was that. I don't know. It was a lot longer than a 30-minute thing, that's for sure.
Right. I was going to say, I think it's the best 90 minutes you'll ever spend after the 90 minutes you're spending with us right now. But anyway, Greg, huge thanks to you for all your help today, and really looking forward to learning about what you've learned in the last 6 weeks of doing local SEO. And we also have a third expert in our midst. And I noticed that Claire put a sad emoji in the chat channel. Claire was just kind of keeping it on the lowdown, keeping it kind of quiet that we had you in the wings. We're also joined by our very own Claire Carlisle. Claire is our kind of in-house sort of resident local SEO expert, as well as also working at Claire Carlisle Marketing, known to people far and wide across the industry as a lovely person and an absolute expert in local SEO. Claire is on hand to do two things today, really. One is to assist in the chat, to answer questions and to provide links to resources, along also with Jenny, who sort of manages our kind of webinar scheme as well. So they'll be sort of managing there, but also Claire's on hand to answer questions during the in the kind of question module as well. We tend to get a lot of questions. We do have 30 minutes at the end for kind of Q&A. We're not going to be able to get around to all the questions, but what Claire does is she jumps in there, she provides some answers in there so that everyone gets an answer to their questions, so everyone can leave the webinar feeling that they've got some real nuggets of gold they can take back to their desk, to their clients, and factor into their SEO work. So huge thanks to Claire for giving up an hour and a half her time to help all of us today. Right, I think we've got, you can look at the poll next. I'm just going to come out a bit. No, so we're going to look at the agenda quickly, and then I'll go to the poll. 3 parts to the agenda, really. First one is understanding which local ranking factors deliver results. Going to spend 30 minutes on that. The next part is looking at how you use data to guide you to kind of greater SEO success, 30 minutes, and then a 30-minute Q&A as well. So that's how the agenda is broken down. Hopefully it's going to be really informative, really tactical, lots of good examples brought forward by our 2 experts that we have with us. And then obviously the Q&A, making sure that we kind of answer your questions in as much detail as possible. But first things first, let's just understand a little bit more about the audience, about our audience today, and how much they use SEO research and studies to influence the SEO work they do. There we go. So those are results. So we had almost 100 participants, and it looks like people are really making a lot of use of the SEO research and studies to influence the kind of work they do. So I guess, Greg and Krystal, how do you read this in terms of the way you yourselves make use of SEO research?
No, yeah, I mean, I always pay attention to any research that comes out, and obviously you want to pay attention to the methodology of that research, because anybody can put out a research project and who knows how great it's going to be. But stuff that comes from BrightLocal, always going to be good. You know, depending on the source, check it out. But one thing I always say to people too is test this stuff for yourself. It's not that hard to look at the research and test it and see if it really matters for your clients. Because while it's probably going to be helpful, don't blindly trust everything. So we're always going to double check, but for sure, pay attention to all the research, always.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I would say have a really strong understanding of your business model or your clients if you are then going to apply this or recommend this to them, and see maybe there's adjustments you need to make along the way. Maybe there's an industry that you might need to change the way you roll this out, especially if it's not based on a service area business or something like that. But yeah, as Greg mentioned, if it's one of the trusted sources that is rolling out regular, consistent, really good studies about local search ranking, absolutely read into it and allow it to influence the way that you work and support your clients.
Brilliant. We're going to come and dig into that in a lot more detail as we go. But let's jump into the first part of the webinar, which is about understanding which ranking factors deliver results. So I guess, Greg, a question I'm going to come to you with first. What SEO activities have driven the best results for your clients in the last 12 months?
Honestly, the basics. The stuff that matters is the stuff that most people aren't doing. So many people look for shortcuts and like, what can I do to rank right now? And everybody tends to really ignore the local SEO 101 stuff, the stuff that Krystal and I have been talking about for over a decade. It's make sure you handle the basics, optimize things the right way, optimize for the right keywords, optimize for the right area where you're in, cover the basics. Like, I know that seems like a cop-out answer, but you'd be surprised how many potential clients and clients come to us with just awful, like they've been paying for SEO and it looks like nothing's been done at all. So just cover the basics. It's all about content links and Google Business Profile.
Okay. I guess, Krystal, same question for you. And I guess you work on more of a consultative basis with bigger businesses, tends to be multi-location, even kind of multinational businesses. So when you're looking at, what's sort of moving the needle for them, what are the things that you're seeing are having a big impact?
Yeah, I think what I'll work with customers is really understanding the way searchers are viewing them on Google. So a great example is what a map pack for a restaurant or a food industry query looks like, and how that's driven almost purely by reviews and images, and making sure that they're focusing on that kind of element, the types of keywords that users are adding to reviews, and the rich images that are being left, or maybe the not so great images that customers are adding, and making sure that they are using that in their strategy. Not just, yes, there are a lot of things that they can push out, but understanding how user-generated content as well impacts them just as much, and how they can participate in that. You can't absolutely control the types of reviews and amount of reviews that you get or the types of images you get, but you need to have an understanding of what your presence looks like. And so from an industry perspective, as well as how a customer would see you on Google, on Apple, on wherever they're searching, making sure you're including that in your strategy. So oftentimes just making sure you're starting there first, alongside kind of your table stakes, the things that you absolutely have to do.
Very interesting. I'm going to come back to some of the table stakes stuff in a second with a different kind of question. But Greg, you mentioned two things that didn't surprise me: links and Google My Business. But then, Krystal, you mentioned images. And actually, Chris in the chat put images down there as well. Talk to me about what impact images have and how, as a business, you can do things to, I guess, influence what images get put up or manage your kind of profile from, a kind of user-generated perspective.
Yeah, so I will just mention, and this might be one thing for Claire, because I feel like we get it on every single webinar, every BrightLocal webinar that's come up, is someone's going to ask about geotagging photos and if that has an impact, which I think plenty of things have been done that, maybe if a user is nearby or their cell phone services have been near your location and they load an image to your listing, there could maybe be some influence. But it's really not something that, I think most businesses need to invest time in. Now, when you think about rich, relevant images that, represent your business and Google can read and use their AI to develop keyword intent and, customer feedback based on, that's really going to have an impact. So they're going to be able to associate things that may not be in your name, may not be in your category, may not be in your content based on the images that are left on your business profile, and allow you to start ranking and showing up for those types of things, alongside just having like a really great visual on your listing that users see on desktop and mobile.
I was talking to a guy that I know named Max. Saw him at this conference I did like a week ago, and he just shot me an email of the thing that they're doing at their dealership. That's really cool. So when they deliver the car to a customer, you just bought a new car for you, whether it's a brand new car or a used car. They have a sign that has the dealership name on it, and they'll have that customer stand in front of the car with the sign and take the picture. But then on the back of the sign, they've got a QR code that takes the customer directly to the Google review interface. So not just to their business profile, but actually pops up the review interface. So it goes directly to it. So then once they take the picture, or actually they have the customer's phone in hand to take the picture of the customer, then they scan it with the customer's phone, give it to the customer and say, hey, go ahead and leave your review about your experience. And you can attach the photo that we just put in. So now every review, or most of the reviews, have a customer photo attached to it. It's a clever idea. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I think if businesses can understand how to use images and user-generated images to their, to their benefit, they're going to see the impact. It's almost industry agnostic at this point. I see, plenty of healthcare-based businesses, service-based businesses. The more unique, relevant images you can get, the more impact you're going to have from a visibility perspective and user perspective as well. If you see a listing that's, packed with relevant, rich images, users are going to be more engaged on your listing as well.
Yeah, and don't always look at photos on your Google profile as I'm doing this to rank. It's a conversion factor too, because especially as you kind of go up in dollar amount of your sale, people are going to do more research before they buy. And if we know people are checking you out versus your competitors, they want to see where they want to do business. So if you've got awesome photos, both from your business and from customers in your Google profile, it just makes you stand out better. Who cares if it really helps you rank? It's going to help you convert, but it'll probably help you rank a little too.
What happens if you run a business that you may think is not a business that can typically get many images? Let's say it's not a restaurant. The car one, actually, the car dealership, it's a pretty kind of unique and kind of creative way of doing it. How about let's say you're a dry cleaner, or let's say you're an accountant that isn't typically image rich. Is it still as important for them? Because I guess other accountants aren't getting that many images either.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for certain verticals. If you're a divorce lawyer, you're probably not going to have tons of people uploading photos at your office or uploading photos with your review. Same thing, like a bankruptcy attorney is going to have a really tough time getting people to upload photos. An accountant, probably pretty tough to get people to upload photos. But anything that's more kind of retail focused, you're buying a product instead of a service, it should be pretty easy to get customers. Even like the dry cleaner, it would be pretty easy to have people upload a picture of the stuff they're picking up, or the nicely pressed shirt or blouse or whatever. At least easier than having a divorce lawyer go, hey, put a photo up with you when you leave a review.
Yeah, and I would say the other thing there is at least monitoring your images as well, to make sure, like, if you are a dry cleaner, you don't have pictures of like stains that weren't cleaned properly or something bad. So while images may not be, kind of your golden nugget to improve your ranking or conversion, at least being able to participate and know what users are adding, and then keeping an eye on competition as well. So from a conversion factor, as long as all of your local competitors don't have better images than you do, or a more rich profile, then as long as you have that understanding, then I think it'll be really good for you moving forward to prioritize maybe what you focus on.
Okay, great. I'm just going to kind of loop back into what Greg said about kind of do the basics. Essentially, Greg, I think you called out GMB or GBP optimization and then links. Has that changed at all in the last year, in the last 2 years, or is it just
the basics?
Is it still just really?
I mean, not really. That's something I was laughing about with a couple of people at this conference that I was at in Las Vegas a week ago. Is people like my presentation style because I'm funny and I cuss and I have movies and whatever. It's a fun thing to watch, and people will come up and say, "Hey, man, I really want to come see you, but there's another presentation at the same time." And if it's somebody I know has seen me before, I always say, go watch the other guy, because literally you can go back and look at presentations I gave 10, 11, 12 years ago about local SEO for car dealers. And 85% of the stuff is exactly the same stuff I'm telling people to do now. Sure, there's some updates around like responsive websites, and it was Google Places and Google Plus for business, and like the terminology might change. And now there's some new things that you can do with, department listings, or, the additional hours feature in Google Business Profiles that wasn't there a couple years ago. But when we're talking about what I mentioned earlier, cover the basics. It's have great content that's about your business and about the local area that's optimized the right way. Have inbound links from local businesses, have a really well optimized profile on Google, regardless of what the name is. None of that's really changed in the last 10 years. It's just people are always looking for a shortcut because they don't want to they either don't want to put in the work, or they want to just do the shortcut and get quick results. So everybody ignores all the basic stuff.
Yeah. And I would definitely underscore, like, the basics are going to carry you. If you aren't doing those, there's always going to be someone that's going to outrank you, outcompete you, that did the basics, but also did the advanced stuff as well. So, like Greg said, like 15% could be, refinement, can be industry specific, can be, adaptations by, some of the platforms and directories, but the core stuff is the same thing, that mattered 5 years ago, 10 years ago to local businesses.
So, Krystal, when you say the core stuff, can you just list it out for everyone? So that, where do you have to have a big tick in a box against certain things just to be sure that you've got it all covered?
So, I mean, first and foremost, you've got to have a really good strategy around your Google My Business or Google Business Profile Management, or whatever it's going to be changed to in the next 6 months or year. And the thing is, there is everything. Like, there's nothing that's available to a business in Google that you should not be doing or should not be on your action plan. So this is things like, updating your categories, understanding how to name your business, activating things like Messenger if it's relevant for your business, leveraging posts, reviews, photos, all of that stuff. That's what I say. It's like, that is your free advertisement to the world. Leverage every piece of real estate within Google. Make sure that you're not interrupting the consumer journey. So again, things like your address, your hours, what is going to put a block in them interacting with you or visiting you that's going to disrupt their journey, and making sure that that's alleviated. Because no matter how amazing your images are or whatever your service looks like, if they drive to you and they show up in the parking lot across the street or something like that, that can, kind of disrupt that experience. So, alleviating any of those from the journey, and I think really focusing on what Google makes available is going to be one of the first things. And then thinking about what's next. So if they haven't been able to make a decision when they see your listing on Google, they might do more research. And this research can be, going to your website, going to your social media profiles, and understanding what types of services do you offer. Are you a lawyer and they want to understand if you offer a very specific, service to them? Do they want to see what pricing looks like? Do they want to see, what distance or package, or if they want to book an appointment? So just kind of the next layer of the consumer journey, and understanding how to make that easy for a customer to find, which oftentimes is going to be about, optimizing your website and creating, all of that available to the user that's going to find you.
The really important bit about what she said is go beyond your Google profile, your Google My Business. That's one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of people making when they start talking about local SEO, is they really just concentrate on the GMB or GBP. Gosh, it's so hard to say that side of things now. They don't really realize, hey, look, your website's still a massive part of local search, because the local algorithm still serves localized results outside of the map pack. So you shouldn't just worry about how you show up in the map pack, because a lot of times the map pack is going to be sorted based on real world location and proximity to the searcher. So you may not be able to show up in the map pack based on density of competition and how far away you are, but you could rock the organic area. So it's think about everything. And sure, social doesn't have any play in how you rank, but like she just mentioned, think about how you look wherever customers might find you, and you've got to have that holistic approach. So
do you consider GMB then to be table stakes?
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
You've got to have it. It's got to be done to take part.
Absolutely.
So according to what you said, Greg, and maybe coming back to you, kind of, Greg, on that point, talking about how some people just do GMB, focus really, really deep on GMB. That's kind of all they do. How far does that get you in terms of competing locally for visibility if you're not doing the other stuff? So if you are, you're new to the industry, or you are looking for a shortcut solution to success, does GMB give you that alone?
The standard SEO answer applies here. It depends. The most important thing to remember for everybody watching, or anybody watching the recording later, when you're talking about local SEO, there is no correct answer for everyone. Every business is unique and every market is unique. So let's look at a crowded market, a crowded metro market like London, Chicago, LA, Dallas. If you're a dry cleaner, there's going to be a whole lot of competition and your potential radius of visibility is going to be pretty tight. But if you're an underwater basket weaving supply store, you're probably the only one in town and you're going to have a massive reach because you'll go way outside of the city area. And if you're the underwater basket weaving guy, you may not even need a website. You could literally just do a Google profile and you'd be fine because you're the only option and you're always going to show up for the queries that matter to you. But for most people, you'll want to do the GMB, GBP thing because that's what populates all that information in your local panel when you show up on a name search. But it's also what allows you to show up in the map pack or in map searches. If you just do the website and don't do the business profile, it's going to be difficult to show up in the pack or in map searches, which is really important for any local business. So you kind of have to do it all, but it's definitely a cornerstone of what you got to do.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, there's going to be industries that are the exact opposite, that are going to have trouble competing if they are just looking at Google. Especially anyone in like a service area industry where they can't rely on their physical address to rank in the areas that they want to, or to highlight for the services that they want to highlight. So those are industries where sometimes the website is a bit more critical, and you might say the website is more table stakes than even a Google business profile.
Yep.
But in most cases, there's competition, right? You don't get many underwater basket weaving sort of business categories. There's usually some competition. I guess most of us, dealing with clients, you're always going to come up against that. So, I mean, for those people who just think it's GBP and I'm 80% of the way there, could you kind of equate, where you see the role of GBP and the amount of impact it has in a relatively kind of competitive scenario, and then what you do next? I am trying to get to the point where you can't just do GBP and expect that everyone's going to come to your shop or the phone's going to ring off the hook.
Well, yeah, because if you only do GBP and it's any sort of competition at all, it's like the example that I always give, unless you're looking for like toilet paper or something that's just kind of a throwaway cheap purchase, you're not just going to go to Google and go to the first site you find and buy from that site. There's always going to be some sort of, at least anywhere from minimal to lots of research. The higher the dollar amount, the more research is going to be done. SEO isn't just about, hey, am I showing up? It's, am I showing up and do I have the answer that potential customer is looking for? And am I memorable? So you've got to do the website along with it, because you may have a stellar GBP that ranks really well and you show up in the pack, and then that customer wants to do a little more research and they click the button to go over to your website, and you got a 1 or 2 page website or one of the crappy Google websites that you can get for free, and you just don't have any information on the site. It doesn't matter. You may be the best solution in the area for that problem, but if you don't have those trust signals and you got a janky looking website, that person's not going to call you.
Yeah, and I think also just remembering there's another step in the journey. So yes, Google My Business might help you rank. It's going to help you get discovered, but like understanding what is the next step. Is it they want to understand more information about you? Like if it's a restaurant, I want to make a reservation. And if for some reason Google has the wrong food ordering integration or reservation link on the profile, I'm going to expect the business to solve that on their website, or I'm going to want a chat option or something else to engage with that business. And it's the responsibility of the business to make that easy. And I think there's limitations to what Google offers that I think a business needs to understand and build out on their website as well.
Because I guess we got to sort of sit with a kind of similar slant on that kind of question from a different angle. You've been in the industry a long time. You've met, spoken to, worked with a lot of probably very, very successful marketeers. You have a lot of impact for the clients they work on. What do they do that sets them apart from the people that aren't as successful? And I guess, on how much overlap is there in what those successful marketers do to each other, and how much of it you think is unique secret sauce for each one?
Yeah, I don't think there's a secret sauce. I think the starting point has to be understanding not only who their customer is, but if there is a new type of customer that they're trying to go get. And that's going to give you your goals, your KPIs, and help you prioritize what you do. So if you don't understand how customers are finding you, what they're looking for when they find you, or what their expectations or gripes are with your service or process, then anything you do is not going to stick, and it's not going to solve whatever challenges you have. So I think the places where I see businesses really succeed is they understand their customer, they understand how their customer's behavior is changing with everything that's happening in the world, and they are adapting to that. So whether it's putting out more information on their Google profile, leveraging every new attribute that's available to them, or knowing that they don't care about attributes and they just want to message me as soon as they find me because they want to try and book an appointment, they're adapting in those aspects. And as a good marketer, you starting the journey at where a customer is going to start their discovery process, I think is going to set you apart from, people that are just optimizing a profile kind of blindly.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Greg, I guess, go follow on. Is there such a thing as best practice for local SEO? And I think, interestingly, if you follow, let's say, best practice, does that lead you towards great success or mediocrity?
So for sure, there's a lot of best practice stuff. The whole video course that we mentioned earlier that I just did, that's about best practices. Claire had a great course in there that's all about best practices. The one thing that I always like to talk about to people is strategy and tactics aren't the same thing. Tactics are what get you to strategy. The strategy piece is there is no right answer. There is no best practice or strategy because it needs to be tailored to what each individual business needs. But the tactics are going to be fairly universal. It's just that, like I said earlier, test the stuff for yourself to see what's really going to move the needle in that particular location for that particular vertical. So you can't just blindly trust to do the same thing for everybody. But tactically, yeah, you're going to need to have an awesome GBP that's really optimized. You're going to need a well-optimized website with good content that answers the questions that people have. You're going to need inbound links from local businesses, and you're going to need good reviews. There's some really basic foundational SEO 101 stuff. When you're optimizing the page across the title tag, the H1, the content, the alt text on the images, and the URL, you need a consistent keyword phrase that you're targeting and optimizing for the page. Don't mix that up. If you're doing geo optimization, you need the same city mentioned every time. Don't list a different city in each element. That's really simple best practice stuff. We have a scoring matrix that I've created that we use to kind of judge the basic level of best practice. So it literally looks at, hey, on your homepage, do you have a city mentioned in the title tag? Or do you have multiple cities? Or do you have no city? Do you have a city mentioned in the H1? Is it multiple cities or no city? So literally, I could be running this on a car dealership or a dry cleaner or an underwater basket weaving studio in Dallas. They could put Honolulu, Hawaii in for the city and optimize for Honolulu, even though they're located in Dallas. Strategically, that would be a bad idea. But when we're looking at basic best practice tactics, all we're looking for is, do they have a city in this spot? Yes or no. So yeah, there's some universal stuff that you should do, but you should always have the tactical differentiation of, here's what we're doing tactically, but here's the strategy that backs up what we're trying to do with those tactics.
Great. Krystal, you said we're nodding along with that. I wonder if there's other...
Yeah, no, just completely agree. I think, agree with the tactics that those are typically universal. And I think that's where sometimes people might get confused a little bit when it comes to applying it, is, are those leading your, into your ultimate strategy, or not having a strategy and just looking at tactics?
So I guess it's a little bit like, ingredients in a recipe. You're always going to have a similar set of ingredients, but you combine them in different measure depending on the recipe that you're creating. Similarly, for different businesses, it's about the combination of tactics that suits that particular business based on their customers, their objectives, what results they're kind of trying to drive. So I guess actually got a sort of slightly kind of broader question. In terms of, maybe for you, Krystal, in terms of what's essential to local SEO success today, in your eyes, what's more important? Is it data and knowledge, or is it execution?
I think I'm going to have to say it's probably fairly equal, because you can execute to, the best of your ability, but if that is misguided or irrelevant to the industry or the strategy, it's just going to be a waste of time. And of course, on the exact flip side, if you got all this great insight and, reporting and analytics, but you don't have the resources or the tools or the know-how to execute, it's just a waste of data. So, I mean, again, kind of cop-out answer, but I think it's equally as important, and probably important that they are measured equally as well.
Greg, as over time, over time, as you work on more clients, you become more proficient. Presumably, your ability to execute kind of gets better and better. How long does it take, in your opinion, to become really proficient at local search marketing? Let's say we've got probably some people on this call who are somewhere long in the tooth, been doing it, for as long as you and Krystal have. But someone relatively new to it, probably wondering, how high the mountain is and how long it's going to take them to get to the top.
I mean, when we say proficient, what does proficient really mean? I hate to say it depends again, but it depends on what your bar for measurement is. Like, a lot of people know me, a lot of people know Krystal because we're out there and we do a lot of webinars like this, and they know that we're these thought leaders in local SEO. And so a lot of people make their bar, hey, I want to be as good as you guys. Well, that takes a long time, but how long does it take to be able to do good work and affect your clients in a positive manner? I mean, you could do that really quickly. Again, if I'm going to hold my bar to I want to be Joy Hawkins, like, she's so far beyond me. I don't think it's possible for me to get there because that's not the career path I'm going at this point in my life. So proficiency is tough to answer, but if you're asking just, hey, how long does it take if you don't know anything you can do local SEO and get good results? I would say you could do that easily within just a few months.
Yeah. And I would add, I think one thing that's really important, no matter what level you're setting your bar at, is the ability to adapt and understand that adapting is going to be a constant. So anyone, no matter how proficient or successful they are, has to realize that local SEO changes all the time, and you need to change and communicate those changes to your customers and the brands you're working with.
Going back to the idea of best practice, is there ever scenarios where actually you want to go against the rules, you want to break the rules for a particular client, either because playing within the boundaries, playing within the rules isn't getting you what you need, or there are scenarios where actually the rules don't apply to them, but it's not moving the needle for a particular customer?
I would say yes. Not consistently or not all the time, but my rule of thumb is there's a lot of gray area with guidelines and best practices. And if you can make a brand know or a client know, completely understand what the risks are, the risk could be suspension, the risk could be, a penalty. But if they are adamant that a competitor is doing X, Y, and Z and they want to do it, I think you as a marketer or as an advisor say, okay, this is how you can do it as safe as possible with these recommendations, but ultimately this is the risk you would be, you could be perceiving. And I think that's our responsibility, is knowing like, hey, not everyone's going to play by the rules. You can either play by the rules and get this far, or you can maybe test some. And when I talk about that with, businesses that have lots of locations, sometimes that's, let's test 5 locations and see what happens. Let's see if that triggers a suspension or something like that. And if you have the opportunity to do some A/B testing, that'll work. But the biggest thing I definitely say is notify them 100% of what the risks are.
Yeah, if you're in a vertical that's traditionally really spammy, there's a lot of talk a few minutes back about HVAC in the chat over here. HBAC's always really spammy, especially in the southern US. Locksmiths are typically super spamtastic. Personal injury attorneys are super spamtastic. So a lot of times if you're in those verticals and everybody else is cheating or 90% of the other people are cheating, you can say, cool, let's just play by the rules. And you're probably going to have them eat your lunch all day long. But if you are going to push those gray areas towards the really not supposed to do this kind of thing strategy, you for sure have to do like Krystal said and let the client know, because the client might just say, hey, I don't care what you do, just get me results. And you go, all right, cool. That means they're signing off for us to do anything. And you go off and you start stuffing keywords in the business name and doing all sorts of janky stuff that's not allowed. And then they get suspended. And then they come back and go, what the heck, man, I'm not showing up. And you're like, well, you said do anything. You don't care. And they said, yeah, but now I'm not showing up. And then they get pissed. You got to like double and triple check and make it very clear. Hey, look, I can do this cheating, evil stuff, but you can get suspended, or you at some point will get suspended. I just want to let you know, make sure that you're okay. When they go, yeah, no, totally okay. Then you go, no, you got to understand, if you get in trouble for this, that means you're not showing up in Google at all for a period of time until we get it fixed. And that could be a couple of weeks. So just keep that in mind. And they go, okay, yeah, no, I'm fine. Okay, just want to make sure. Like, you really got to drive it home. And then if they say, okay, cool, and you want to play that way, then cool, play that way. I don't personally do that. When we have clients that come to us and they want us to be dirty cheaters, we tell them we're not the right solution for them, because I don't like to do things that aren't sustainable and do work that, sure, maybe they get results right now, but they get screwed 3 months from now. I'm not in that game.
Yeah, I would typically say similar. It's the gray area. I try not to veer towards anything that's absolutely against guidelines or absolutely against policy. It's more like, let me take all of these things into consideration and let you know that there's no perfect answer, but this is how we think you would be as safe as possible doing something like this.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because, we know in competitive environments where people are looking to get an edge, it's so easy to think, well, others are doing that, so I'm going to kind of go into that kind of realm as well. I guess, probably one thing, talking about Greg, in terms of having that multiple reiterations of, making sure the client really understands, I guess putting it in writing in some sort of contractual terms of some sort would probably, minimize the blowback to you and ensure the client truly does get that what they're doing is straying beyond your typical recommendations. I've got a great question for you. I'm going to come to you, Krystal. And I'm going to come to both of you with it, but I'll come to Krystal first. What are the biggest sort of red herrings or myths that cause SEOs to waste a lot of time, effort, energy, sort of budget today?
We don't have enough time to cover this one.
Your favorite three, then?
I would say one of the things that just still comes up so frequently that I just get flabbergasted by is how much time people spend putting in specific service areas inside their Google profile, thinking that like they're going to rank in those zip codes or in those cities. And it just still has zero impact on your ranking. And I feel like we've talked about that for a long time and talked about maybe eventually in, a future decade, Google's going to have a service area algorithm, but like adding those areas in your service area business in Google just draws an outline on the map. It doesn't do anything else. And I see so many people that have spent a lot of time, kind of optimizing that or picking out the perfect cities or, counties that are relevant to them. And I'm like, it's going to show a little bit. It's really not going to impact that much.
Great. Greg. Well, I might flip-flop between the two of you because I'm sure you're going to spark off each other.
Oh, for some reason, this one's been popping up a lot lately of people asking if they should build links to their Google business profile to help it rank better. No, that doesn't work. So don't do that. The other one I love is the comma-separated list of cities, where it's like, we also serve customers in, and they list out like 4, 5, 10, 15, 20. I did an audit of a car dealership website a week ago that the second sentence on their homepage, well, the first sentence was, welcome to the website for whatever the name of the dealership was, period. Second sentence, we also serve customers in city A, city B, city C, 36 cities in a comma separated list. So an entire paragraph of just cities in a comma separated list, because they think that's going to make them show up in those cities, and it doesn't work that way.
Krystal, any other ones that you find will talk about a lot, or you think will distract SEOs from really good work?
I think what I mentioned earlier, like the fact that geotagging your photos still comes up. I love the example though that Greg showed, because I think QR codes are making a really powerful comeback, and they're having their moment since the pandemic. Having a user load a photo when they're nearby a business, absolutely, but that's not the exact same thing as geotagging a photo. So I think businesses that spend time on that, it's ask users at your location or that have been to your location to add a photo. But otherwise, I think it's kind of a waste.
Okay. Greg, any other ones that you think people waste their time on?
I mean, I think those are the top ones for sure, because I see a lot of people lately trying to stuff keywords in their responses to reviews.
Yeah.
Because keywords in the text of a customer review can have a positive boost, but keywords in your response don't matter. So you see these really responses that just don't read to be genuine responses because they're clearly just trying to put stuff in there as keyword stuffing. That doesn't work. The geotagging of photos doesn't work. I'm trying to think of what else. Like, there's so much bad stuff out there.
I was going to say the reviews
concentrating so much on GMB and not concentrating on their website still happens a ton. Sorry, I talked over you. What'd you say?
No, it's okay. I was going to say the reviews one as well. With there's been so many recent use cases, I think, with people just like in their signature, just putting a bunch of random words in their review response to think that has an impact. And I think, Google's got some places to go, but I think they understand it's easy enough to keyword response or keyword stuff a review response. Same thing with description. That still does not have much impact at all.
Okay. But I just noticed in the chat that Salix asked a question that I was going to ask around the benefit at all of making use of the free Google website that you get with a GBP listing. What do you see as the purpose or the benefit of that if you have your own website?
I think so. The website Google created that you're allowed to is really targeted for regions that are less sophisticated, that don't have the resources to, create websites, or, maybe there are areas where people don't have the same resources to hire a web developer and that kind of thing. That's truly the intention. It's not going to outrank any other website you build. I think not even close. There's a lot of more limitations, but that was Google's intention. If you don't have a website and you don't have the resources to create a website, or it's going to take a little bit too long, it could work in the meantime. But if you have the means or you have another website, that's definitely going to be much more impactful.
Okay, great.
That was a much nicer answer than I would have given.
You can give yours as well.
I would say there is no value in that website, because nowadays it is not hard to get a really cheap website. You can go to like GoDaddy or HostGator or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, $3.22 a year for hosting for WordPress sites now, or something ridiculously cheap. And you literally click a button and it spins up a WordPress site, and then you spend your $5 on your domain name. So you're in for less than $100 to have a website. You can get free templates and put your own content up. You're going to have to write content on the free Google site anyway. You just can't do anything with the free Google site. If we talked earlier about how important it was to stand out and to look great and to do the things you need to do, you just can't do those on the free Google site. So don't do them.
And Greg, I saw you replied to a comment around posts in terms of the impact that posts have. I didn't see what you were responding to. I just saw your response. So I guess there's been quite a few kind of comments around posts. What's for the two of you? What's your take on the value of posts today?
Yeah, so I was answering. Oh,
yeah, go ahead, Greg.
No, go first.
No, I was going to say, I think my opinion about posts, so the question was about keywords in your post or posts for ranking. And on that one, I absolutely agree with Greg. I don't, long term, I don't think just having posts as a strategy improve your ranking. But I think what Greg was saying is, focusing on the keywords in the post for justifications, you should really pay attention and leverage it as an ad. But I've seen some, and I don't call it ranking, I say visibility for some very specific keywords. So if you've got a relevant promotion or product launching or something like that, and using some really specific keywords, it's not going to improve your long-term ranking for that, but it does have the ability to give you some temporary, really nice visibility in the map pack and a call out with a justification. Not that I disagree with Greg. Absolutely. I think it's like a free ad you can have on your listing, but that was kind of the conversation going on there.
But if you're going to do that, you just need to keep it in your mind, like what she said. It's still an ad, but as you're writing the ad, do it creatively. So you might have those in there. You should never do a post just because you want the justification, because then you have a post that there's really no value in that post. And a lot of, man, I could go on all day about posts. A lot of people will want to like, they approach posts like it's social media, and they share the same social fluff that they share on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Like, hey, here's our most recent blog post. But you got to remember, those posts are showing up to people that haven't been to your website yet in most cases and don't know who you are yet in most cases. So sharing a blog post about some random BS is not going to make them want to click on you. They're not going to care. You really need to approach posts like they are free ads that show up in search results. They've got to be compelling. They've got to be awesome. It's got to give people a reason to click. I saw one the other day that I was doing an audit for a car dealership, and they had a Google post that was something about St. Patrick's Day, but the text in the image got cropped out because of the way that they had their image. So all you saw was half of a car in a green background, and it said, Happy St. Patrick's Day. And there was no call to action and no link. Why? What's the point? There's no value in that. So think about, why is this post here? What do I want somebody to do with this post? You're not just putting the post up to rank because that doesn't matter. You're putting the post up because it's an ad. What are you advertising? You should always have a call to action link. And that call to action link should lead to a landing page on the site that makes sense, not to your homepage. And it should be an ad. It should be promotional. And too many people screw up with posts and only worry about the content of the full post. But that doesn't really matter because nobody's going to see that unless the thumbnail is compelling enough for them to click on in the first place. So you have to pay attention to what's visible in the cropped image of the thumbnail and the first few lines of text that shows up in the thumbnail if you want to be successful. And that was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the really important things that Greg said was you should have a different strategy for your Google business posts than you do for your Twitter, to your Facebook feed, to your social feed. It's completely different audiences and use cases and the way that they display to users. And the focus on the image, could not be more relevant. That's what they're going to see. They might see a sentence. Like sometimes they see 50 characters of the word. So your image has to attract them enough that they're going to click.
And something else too, sorry, Miles, got to jump in on this because there have been questions throughout the chat about how often should we post. And Donna just said, hey, once every 7 days. And other people are like, yeah, weekly. One guy was like, yeah, I do 2 to 3 a week. Somebody was like, yeah, I do it daily. Again, approach it like an ad and think about what's the value here. You don't need to do it weekly anymore. The reason that the cadence is weekly pretty much anywhere you go is because it used to be that if you use the what's new post template, which is what most people are going to use, it's going to be visible for 7 days and then go away. If you use the offer post or the event post, there's a date range. It's only visible during the date range. So people are like, well, cool. If I'm going to use the regular post, I need to do one a week. Well, now they stay visible for 6 months. So you don't really have to do it once a week unless you've got offers that change all the time. You definitely want to pay attention to the fact that if you have more than one live at a time, it shows up in a carousel. And if you've got 15 posts that are live all at once, nobody's going to see past the first 2 or maybe the first 4. But if you've got more than 4, nobody's seeing anything past that. So if you're posting a couple of times a week, you got to realize really only the 2 most recent posts are the ones that are going to be visible to potential customers, and anything else is going to be wasted effort. So be careful and don't post too often.
Okay. We've got about 8 minutes, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A. So just a quick nudge to everyone. If you've got a burning question that you want Krystal or Greg or even Claire to answer, please put it in the Ask Question section in the bottom of the screen. We're jumping over there in about 8 minutes time. You could also upvote existing questions. The most voted for questions rise to the top, and that's where we'll start. So please do spend a bit of time adding your upvotes or adding your questions in there, and we'll do our best to get through as many as possible. We've got a couple more sort of questions for the panelists now. I guess, Krystal, I'm just going to come to you next. We've talked a bit about how the basics work in local SEO, how the basics haven't changed a huge amount. With that in mind, how much sort of attention and care and concern do algorithm updates and changes within Google affect what you do or affect the way you think? or is it you've got a long-term strategy that doesn't deviate as Google makes tweaks here and there?
I would say if you have a holistic SEO strategy that is the basics are foundational to, then you actually shouldn't have to pivot much during algorithm updates. Sometimes there are updates that hit industries or particular features much harder than others, and there might be something small. But for the most part, if you are doing things, kind of correctly with your basics in tow, and paying attention to the things that are really important, then an algorithm update shouldn't scare you. And it also shouldn't excite you that much, because you shouldn't allow your business to get to a place where you are reliant on Google's algorithm. It should really be, you should be able to maintain, consistent enough traffic throughout, the process if you're doing all the correct things.
Really, if you have something that was majorly affected by an update, that means you probably weren't doing things right in the first place in most cases. Now, that's obviously an overgeneralization, because maybe there's an update that's a YMYL related thing, and you have healthcare clients, and that just hits healthcare clients everywhere. Doesn't necessarily mean you were doing something wrong. But a standard like the page experience update that came out, or even the vicinity update that came out, if you were really relying on stuffing stuff into the business name and that got nerfed in that update, well, then that means you were taking a shortcut and you weren't following all the basics like we talked about earlier. But if you follow the basics and do things right and look forward and don't push those gray areas too hard, you really shouldn't be affected by too many updates, unless they're something that really hits one vertical.
Okay. Greg, I guess a question for you, and Krystal, you might be able to answer. I know you work with a lot of sort of large organizations, lots of locations, probably bigger brand presence. Do you feel, Greg, that Google, in the organic results, maybe more than the map pack results, favors bigger brands because it understands more about them and they've got that authority that's come through the scale, versus smaller independent one-off location businesses or smaller kind of regional businesses? And if that is the case, what can those small businesses do to combat the bigger competitors?
I think saying that might be an oversimplification. It's not really that Google favors bigger brands. It's typically that bigger brands just have more authority. They've been doing all of the basics and they've covered everything, and they've just got a more authoritative entity in Google's eyes, a better website that's better optimized with more links. And they've handled their Google profiles well. And they've got a lot of reviews because it is a massive organization. And the mom and pop smaller business guys, that's a big hill to climb to compete. But the benefit is small businesses can move a lot faster than enterprise businesses. You don't have all the red tape. You don't have to get stuff approved by legal. You don't have to say, yeah, we want to do this. And it goes to the dev team and you get in the queue and nothing happens for 3 months because they have other priorities. Small businesses can move very fast and be very agile, and you can typically out local SEO the big entities if you do all of the basics better than the big entities, because the big entities aren't really going to pay attention to the overall. They're going to pay attention to, national and international focus, and then a little bit of local SEO around their individual listings and their individual pages on the site for each place. But it's easy to outdo it and do it better in most cases.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I always say, when I'm working with a large business, they move like a cruise ship, and smaller businesses or smaller marketing agencies are like a jet ski. They can come in and they can navigate and make changes quickly, where it's just like, you've got to get through IT, you've got to get through, legal, procurement, all of this stuff. And it makes adapting a little bit harder. But I will say, from an authority perspective, especially when you're thinking about organic, on some really specific queries or industries, there are even ways that it makes it's harder for large brands to compete with even more authoritative sites. So for example, if you're in hospitality or you're a hotel, seldom is your website ever going to outrank TripAdvisor. If you're a restaurant, like, seldom is your restaurant ever going to outrank Yelp in the US. So they have a much better structure and focus on their vertical, and you have to kind of play with them if you do want to, be visible in those first 1, 2, or 3 results, and understand no matter what you do for your website, you're never going to outrank Yelp.
when you say play with them, you mean be visible on those sites themselves?
Exactly. Yeah. So that way, if someone searches your restaurant, not only does your restaurant website show up, but your restaurant on Yelp shows up, hopefully with pretty positive reviews and images.
Yeah. Okay. Final question.
Barnacle SEO.
Barnacle SEO. Good old Barnacle SEO. I haven't heard that phrase in a long time. I guess because of both of you, let's say not necessarily the next 12 months, next 24 months, but let's say in the future, what do you think, in terms of what do you predict is going to change? What's going to become more prominent, more of a focus, going to have more impact, within a reasonable time frame that you think, I think this is where Google's moving, or I think these things are starting to be used more by consumers. What do you think is going to change and emerge over the next, period of time?
Meta keywords are coming back, baby. Honestly, I think it's going to be more and more focus on your Google business profile and new features that are coming out there. A lot of people are upset and they say, well, Google's trying to take away the need for my website. But if you think about it, people don't need to go to your website to get your phone number. So who cares? And nobody's really upset about that now, but people were really upset about that years ago. Who cares if they don't go to your website to get your address? They don't go to your website to see pictures. They don't go to your website to read your FAQ page. If they could do all that in your Google business profile, cool. You just got to pay attention there and make sure that your profile shines. So I think there's going to be more emphasis on what's in the Google business profile, with more features being added and more emphasis on user-generated content, both through reviews and photos.
Okay, great. And Krystal?
So I completely agree with that, but a slightly different angle is, I think historically, Google My Business, Google Business Profile was really focused on the brick and mortar experience, taking someone that was searching online into your store. And I think as we see a lot of these changes coming out, that Google is starting to be a little bit more lenient in highlighting e-commerce and virtual and kind of digital experiences. So promoting things like, click to purchase, click to make an appointment, those types of things, where historically it was all about go to the location, get your driving directions, get in the car. So I think we'll see more elements there, but also the reverse scenario. So one thing I know is when I'm in a store and it's not, I'm looking at a product that I've never looked at before or have interest in, I cannot buy it with like a good conscience without going online to see what the reviews are. It's just innately in my experience. And I think as consumers expect that, there's going to need to be something that brings like those reviews, those comments in store, makes it easier, like quick to scan. And I think Google or someone is going to be primed to kind of hit that market. So creating a more seamless experience, whether you're physically in store or you want to have a virtual appointment or you want to complete everything, online and navigating that. But I think, Google's ultimately going to be able to bridge the gap there.
Okay, great. But I guess overarching in terms of its focus on becoming incredibly proficient at the basics, really doubling down on those, paying attention to the different sort of setups, needs, customer requirements, and I guess the goals of each particular customer, and varying the tactics that you use to come up with the right mix for each one. That has been tried and tested for X years to now, and you see it kind of being the same sort of moving forward without too much of a shift.
Yeah, small variations as things change, as new features roll out, but for the most part, it's about serving the consumer however they want to interact with your brand.
Okay, great. Let's jump over to the Q&A section now. We have 48 questions. I know Claire is in there firing her answers back sort of very quickly. So thank you, Claire, for doing that. We'll pick them off the top. So the first one comes from Jim Froling, who many of us know very well. Jim is a regular attendee on the webinars. He's actually got 15 upvotes. So Greg, come to you first. How do you suggest handling clients' objections when ranking reports don't correlate with their own search results?
I'd love to take this one. I'm actually doing a presentation at Brighton SEO in a couple of weeks about how to do better reports. The answer here is don't give freaking ranking reports to your clients at all. Period. It doesn't mean squat in the real world. Ranking reports are inherently flawed because they do not reflect what real world customers see, especially when it comes to local SEO, because we know real world proximity to the searcher from the location is a huge influence on the map pack. So if they're tracking the map pack, that's already out the window. But proximity also matters in the localized organic as well. And where people are affects what search results they see. So how is a computer going to emulate that? It doesn't. Sure, some are kind of accurate and the grid searches are cool to look at, but you should use that as a high level gauge of, are we getting more visibility? You should never give ranking reports to a client. Everything that goes in your report should show them the value of your service and why there's ROI in doing marketing with you and what sort of results they're getting that matter for their bottom line. People don't hire you to do SEO to get them to rank. It doesn't matter, because ranking doesn't matter to their bottom line. People hire you so that they sell more of the stuff they're trying to sell. Ranking does not matter in any way to that. What matters is, are they getting more traffic? Are they getting more leads? Are they selling more stuff? Don't put rank stuff on your reports. But that was a long-winded thing. But to also really answer Jim's question, if you're already doing that and they're saying, hey, this doesn't match what I see in my location, you say, well, yeah, that's because this is a ranking software that this platform is trying to emulate what people see in the real world, but real world location really influences those results. That's why you'll see something different than what this sees. You could go a block away from where you are and probably see different results as well. That's why rank tracking is really more of a big picture thing and not something that really assesses whether SEO is working or not.
There you go. Mic drop.
I'm a little passionate about that, sorry.
Yeah. You can't get around the clients ask for it, though, can they? Clients do obsess about their ranking. They just do. It's, and I guess you've got to have build up the trust and relationship with them to educate them or wean them off that, to say, look, actually, there are other much more crucial metrics, but they do ask for it. They do talk about it. They could even be a little bit obsessive around, appearing number 1 or 2 for a particular sort of passionate term that they've got.
Yeah, I would say, if you're in an environment where, like Greg said, you're already delivering rank reporting, or you're dealing with businesses where rank reporting has been a KPI for 5 years, and it's going to take maybe another 5 years to get them to pay attention to other conversion factors or metrics. One, continuously redirect or support, but also, yes, if you can use rank reporting as directional, is typically like those daily or weekly rank reports are going to ultimately, I think, going to be quite a bit of trouble. If you can say, this is monthly from a directional standpoint, this is how things are moving, unless there's huge jumps or big leaps, again, similar to ranking algorithms, they shouldn't be guiding too much. Ultimately, you should be looking at how many clicks are you getting, and are those clicks to calls, clicks to driving directions, website, how many conversions are you getting, booking those appointments. That's what ranking reports should inform. It shouldn't inform like, we're not showing up enough for this keyword, but if you're still getting as good enough conversions or ultimately more customers, then there's not much more to pay attention to. It is tricky though. And I wish every client would just say, oh, we don't care about ranking, but I know that's not always the scenario.
Yeah, but I guess you have to say that role as an educator, as the more knowledgeable.
Somebody asked if I could write an article about that. I'm looking up while you ask the next thing. I actually did a video about it, and I'll put it into the chat so people can see. And you could just send that off to your clients and go, this dude Greg is legit. He knows his stuff. He speaks all over the world, and here's why Greg says this isn't important, and maybe that'll help you.
Right. We're going to get through these questions a little bit faster. So, Krystal, coming to you. This comes from Katie Fitzgerald. Says, I'm working with a ton of mobile businesses that want to hide their location on their GBP and also their listings. What suggestions do you have for mobile businesses to help them rank better locally if they're having to, hide their address?
Yeah, mobile is going to be a tough one as well, because, you're going to rank, to Greg's point, where your physical address is, even when you hide your business. This is one of the industries where I cannot stress the importance of a really good on-site strategy. Understanding that, you need to target a specific area. There are things you can do from an on-page experience, whether it's title tags or content and all of those types of things. But this is one where Google's not going to be the end game, and it can't be the end game because Google is, especially the GMB listing, is heavily reliant on a physical address. There are little things, maybe the way that customers leave reviews, where they're located, if they are closer to where your target customer is versus where your physical location is, those can send some small indications to Google that you are relevant to users in that area. But that's not just like an exact science. You can't just say, hey, everyone in this location, leave me a review. Those are natural things that happen. Google will start to understand. But from a proactive perspective, there's going to be on-page content around that location, backlinks from businesses, small businesses in an area that are relevant, that are going to be helpful. But that's, again, long-term things. There's not really any short-term wins here.
Okay, great. So essentially, focus a lot more on your website and a kind of typical organic signals. I'm going to stick with you, Krystal, because Claire's said that you are a great person to answer this question. This comes from Howard. Is it still risky to change a location-based GMB to a service area GMB within the dashboard?
When you say risky, as long as you are you're not open to the public, then you absolutely should. If you're a home address and you are changing it, or you're servicing people out of a business that's not somewhere they can visit, it's actually riskier to not hide your address. If someone reports you or Google finds that, people can't visit you, then you can get suspended. I hear it's like 50-50 at this point. People make any change to a service area business and then it immediately gets suspended. And then there's, long-term suspension loops. It should not be risky. And if you truly are a service area business, you should hide your address. Just be prepared that it might get suspended, or you might have to re-verify, which is about like 1 to 2 weeks period of time. And that's more about understanding those gray areas, knowing the verticals that Google determines are spammy, which basically is like everything service area sometimes, and know that they, unfortunately, to prevent spam, make it harder for those legitimate businesses to compete. And that's just that's how, it exists. It's unfortunate, but that's what happens. So just be prepared, maybe 2 to 2 weeks that, you might have to re-verify your listing.
So you should expect a re-verification. Is there anything you do in advance to sort of smooth the path so that, you're making yourself, making Google look upon you differently in a more sort of positive way before you make that change?
There are some things, but if it happens algorithmically, Google doesn't have, someone that's looking at your street view and evaluating all of the points of your business that they do during a reinstatement. During a reinstatement, it is going to like a human team that's evaluating all these elements. There's things that might happen algorithmically that it doesn't matter what you do, you can still get suspended. But it's good to be prepared if you do have to go through reinstatement, that you have all the proof that you're a legitimate, service area business. That's really, would be my recommendation, is prepare for the worst in that scenario if you're in one of those categories.
So if you're going to make that change, get the documentation and things you need so you can submit it quickly, so you can minimize the suspension time, or I guess you'll have to do re-verification anyway. But if you get suspended, have the data available so you can minimize the time that you're suspended for.
Absolutely.
So Greg, next question actually is a brilliant follow-on question. This comes from Chris. Why is Google constantly suspending businesses if the address changes? What's the sort of logic behind that? And what can you do to speed up the process of unsuspending a legitimate business?
Yeah, basically it's because there's so many dirty cheaters out there that the algorithm is just a little bit aggressive on people changing their address. There's a lot of things that are triggering suspensions lately because there's a lot of dirty cheaters ruining things for the rest of us. That's really the answer to why there's a lot of cheaters that screwed up for everybody else. And, statistically, whenever you have an algorithmic model, if that algorithmic model does not give you a couple of false positives, it's not aggressive enough. So maybe they're still trying to tweak it and get it to the right level, but unfortunately, it's going to cause some suspensions. Is there anything you can do to speed up the process? Not really. Stay on top of it. Get it done as quickly as possible. If you are having weird issues, always go to the forum and post on the forum. And Krystal's a gold level expert. I'm a gold level expert. A lot of us there can, help escalate you to the GMB or GBP team if there's some sort of a bug or problem there.
So essentially anything kind of address related in terms of changes there, and or switching different types of business, you should probably anticipate some problems ahead if you're making those changes. You need to be prepared for it. If you're going to do it for clients, make sure they know that as well. Be really above board and upfront about it, and this is what the consequences are likely to be. If you don't get it, then great. But if you do get it, you've kind of smoothed the path ahead on the communication side. Next question, I'm going to come to you, Krystal, which is from Warren. It says, I think I understand. I'm trying to paraphrase this a little bit. Well, not paraphrase, but turn it into language that I think is what he's trying to say is, it's about the relationship between organic ranking and local rankings. Essentially, if you're doing well in kind of Google SERPs and your ranking goes up, should you expect your ranking in Google Maps to kind of go up for similar keywords? And the work you do on your website, what's the kind of crossover in terms of the impact that has, not just on your website, but on your GMB listing?
Yeah, I would say expect might not be the right word, but there is definitely a correlation to having a strong on-site local SEO focus to improving your local map pack rankings. It's, I think in recent studies, it's maybe 5 to 10%, and that's going to vary based on industry. There's going to be some industries and businesses where that's much higher and others where that's much lower. Again, taking into consideration, competition, reviews, those types of things that are really impactful on your Google business profile. But absolutely, if you have all of your kind of on-site elements, addressed, and then you've got local focus that matches the local focus of your Google business profile, there's a correlation. There's certainly ways that Google's looking at those for cues and indications that you are relevant, that these things are important, and that customers are interested in seeing you for particular queries. And they definitely get some of that information from your website.
Okay, great. Excellent answer. Thank you, Krystal. Greg, one for you that comes from Ross. It's all about service area, city location pages on your website. So what are the most important things to include on those pages in order to increase rankings in the SERP?
So, couple of things here. Again, the silly answer, it depends. It's really going to depend on your area and how dense the competition is. But the most important idea to keep in your head is you got to own your backyard first. And this is what we tell everybody. And I've been saying this at conferences for years. So many businesses and so many agencies want to get a business to rank in nearby cities outside of their local area to expand their visibility. You might work with a business and they're like, yeah, I want to show up in this city over here and get customers from there. That's only okay if they own their backyard. They need to be doing really well in search results where they're actually located before you go try to show up somewhere where you don't have a physical location and you can't serve customers face-to-face in that city. You're never going to show up better than competitors that are actually in that city if you don't have a solid enough SEO foundation to show up well where you're actually located first. But let's assume that you have a good foundation, you own your backyard, you show up well in your own town, and you want to start expanding out. That doesn't mean it's okay to go throw out 50 city pages that are all crap content. You need to target pages or target areas where you can pull, where you're going to be able to get visibility, and where you have quality content. Sometimes a city page is great and works really well and gets you great results. Other times, if there's enough competition or there's just more density of competitors, a city page isn't going to cut it and it won't do anything for you. And you're going to have more of like a local content silo around that location, which is a lot more involved and takes longer to work. But the big point here is most of the time people asking this question don't have the basics covered in their own town and don't own their backyard. So what's the point of targeting somewhere else if you're not getting the low-hanging fruit of showing up well in your own town anyway?
So can you maybe talk a little bit briefly around silos versus a single page, when you would have a silo, and is it better to have a very, very rich page or to splinter it out into a few pages?
Yeah, so gosh, I would go, if I wasn't talking, I'd go look up videos. I did a video about city pages and another video about content silos in my weekly series to explain the difference there. So if you guys are curious, you can go to the Search Lab website and look those up. But basically, a city page is going to be one single page optimized around a city that says, hey, we do this and we serve people in this city and whatever, but it's got to be a robust, useful page. And that can work. But if it's more competition or more dense number of competitors and you got to go with a silo, I hate using the word microsite, but that's the easiest way to think of it. You create a siloed area of content on the site where instead of just having a single page saying, hey, we do all of these things, it's almost like a micro version of your site that's siloed off in your site. So now instead of saying, hey, I'm a personal injury attorney in Dallas, it's I'm a personal injury attorney in Dallas for the main section of the site, but then you have a silo targeting Fort Worth or Plano or Garland or Richardson or whatever city in there that you want to target. And you don't just have one page that's personal injury attorney in city 2. It's a personal injury attorney, a dog bite attorney, a car crash lawyer, bike accident, slip and fall. It's all the major products or services. So now you're going to have duplicate pages on your site. So to avoid duplicate content issues, you have to write unique versions of content, but optimize it around a different location. And all of that content needs to interlink among itself so that it's all related. And when you're doing link building, now you're doing link building for your actual location, and then doubling up your link building efforts because you want links from targeted businesses and websites in the city you're targeting to link to that silo of content on your site. So it's a much more in-depth strategy, but it can work better than a city page if there's a lot of competition.
Do you recommend a strategy of testing it for one location and seeing the impact? Yeah.
Yeah. And we've seen situations too where you'll have a site that can show up easily in other cities with a simple, well-done city page, but other cities, like cities to the west, there's not as much competition. They're fine with city pages. To the east is a really major metro, and a city page just isn't going to cut it. Even for the suburbs in the metro, a city page won't cut it. And in that case, they'd have to go silo. So you'd have to mix it up. Sometimes you've got more rural clients and city pages work and they can get visibility 100 miles away. Sometimes you got clients in a really crowded metro like LA or Chicago or Dallas or New York, and like city pages aren't going to make any sort of a difference whatsoever. So you really have to kind of figure out, what does the competition look like? What does my local reach look like? What does competition look like in the city that I'm targeting? Do I own my own backyard? And then if so, let me test and see, hey, is a city page going to work? You'll find out really quickly. And if it doesn't work, cool. You're probably going to have to go with the silo, or, if it doesn't work then and you're not really super in depth as far as your local SEO knowledge, you probably need to find somebody that you can grab for some consulting to kind of help you out, because that gets really advanced really quick.
Okay, thanks, Greg. That's a lot of detail. Thank you very much. Krystal, this is a question that's come from Nicholas. It's related to the vicinity update, and actually, very nice of Nicholas. It plugs some research we did around vicinity, but in a nutshell, showed that we compared businesses that we termed to be the keyword rich in their name or spammy, and also the length of the kind of GBP sort of business name as well. Essentially, the upshot is that longer business names and those with spammy business names suffered more, i.e. they lost rankings in the vicinity update in comparison to those businesses that didn't appear to have keywords or spam in their names. It wasn't a huge swing, to be fair. It was relatively kind of marginal, but the evidence over around 700 locations, I think, and maybe that was a swing anyway. What's your take on the result of the vicinity update, Krystal, in terms of using keywords in business names?
So I think for years, one of the biggest complaints of businesses that have been trying to, build their business within guidelines on Google would always complain how easy it was for other businesses to keyword stuff and then immediately outrank them. My assumption is Google finally did something about that. While it wasn't a perfect science and it's not, immediately anyone that has a keyword loses their ranking, I think they came up with some type of logic that, again, counts the number of, additional keywords in a name or how many location letters are in a name, and came up with some dial. I think ultimately, if you have a legitimate keyword in your name, which you should, if you could have a relevant keyword in your business name and add that on Google, that still is going to have an impact. There's still a correlation to a good keyword in your name to ranking. But don't stuff it. Or now you're probably more discouraged when it comes to stuffing it, or hopefully spammy businesses are more discouraged from stuffing their name because it doesn't gamify the system as much as it used to. But still focus on having relevant keywords in your name. If they're legally in your business name, that shouldn't be a problem.
But also don't be like, it passed around on socials a few months back, the emergency room that named themselves ER Near Me. They went and named their business ER Near Me, so they would show up in searches for ER Near Me. Well, what happens when Google makes any sort of an update that makes that not work anymore? And now keywords in your business name get nuked and don't have an effect. Now you've got just a idiotic business name for the rest of eternity, unless you want to go rebrand. So yeah, use them if you can, but also don't go make a bunch of changes just to be able to cheat and have keywords there, because that's not sustainable either.
Yeah, those are shortcuts that we definitely, don't make sense. But if you're an Italian restaurant and your main food is pizza, like, it doesn't hurt to make sure you have pizza in your name when it's legally within your name. There's so many, it's just, I see that oftentimes restaurants are relying on their brand name. And then they're competing with the likes of Pizza Hut and, people that have actual the main keyword in their name.
Great question for you about products with GMB products or GBB products. Have you made much use of them? Do you find them valuable and of value, and how do they work and what's good about them?
So a lot of people will use them. Like we see a lot of attorneys putting in, hey, like a bankruptcy attorney, we do chapter 7, we do chapter 11, we do chapter 13, or like we're a dog bite lawyer, a car crash lawyer, a truck crash lawyer. Okay, I kind of see how people are trying to do that, but really products is more for like a retail location showing the things that you have to offer. Most of our clients, we're really heavy in automotive just because I was automotive for such a long time, and you can do products there and it can be okay. But in the United States, they've now rolled out the ability to display your actual inventory on your Google profile. So when you do that, you don't have products anymore. Even if you had them before, products go away as soon as you connect that feed. And that's really successful for the dealers that do it, especially when they rolled it out. It was only showing on mobile. Now it shows everywhere. So that's really cool. And that works awesome. Sure. I mean, like we said earlier, if you can do something in Google My Business and it's available, do it. Are you doing products because you think it's going to help you rank better? Okay, then probably don't do products. But if you're doing products because you want a better first impression with potential customers and you want to stand out from competitors that aren't doing it, well, then heck yeah, do it all day long and it'll make a difference for you.
So service businesses, like lawyers, for example, or accountants offering different types of services in their fields, are they making use of products? And is that working for them? It is.
I mean, I don't see a whole lot of movement on it when it's like a service-based business and they're just putting the service that they provide in as a product. I really see it being more successful when it's a physical product you can buy at that location. But I mean, again, look at it like, let's use the attorney example. Putting what kind of case you handle in as a product doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But if none of your competitors are doing it, but you're doing it, and it makes your profile look different, you're probably not doing it because you think it's going to help you rank for those services. But in that case, I would 100% want to do it and be the only lawyer in town that's got them, because now my profile looks better than all of my competitors. So you also have to have that differentiation of you're not doing SEO just for SEO. You're doing SEO to be memorable and to stand out from competitors, not related to how you rank, but once you do rank, you'll want to be memorable and you want to stand out. So some of these things you'll want to do because of that. It's not all about I'm only going to do the things that are going to influence my ranking.
Fair enough. Okay. I reckon we've got time for probably 5 more questions if we go pretty quickly. Krystal, question for you around GBP posts and how to make them more visible. This comes from Camilo, who says, I regularly post with good quality content, but the number of views is very low. What can I do to increase them?
So one of the things I would mention is when you're looking at stats of your Google post, the view is not equal to the view of your profile. It is someone that has clicked on that the post and actually sees the full post. So it's always going to be a lot lower. It's lower on your profile. Again, I would just focus on a great image and something that's attractive and relevant. So it shouldn't be something that's going to be in your standard image carousel. It shouldn't be something that's on social that people can see and just are going to scroll. Make it something that they want to engage with. Offers really have always performed the best in my experience. Give them something, give them a discount, give them a sale, a free product, something like that, and just make it, rich images.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great question for you around Google Search Console data. Do you find that using Google Search Console data useful for measuring search query performance related to GBP listings by filtering listing website URL and UTM parameters?
I would not use Search Console like that. The way we look at Search Console is Search Console is like a health check for your site, not a performance report system. If you want to see how are things performing, you should be using Google Analytics, not Search Console. Can you do that? Sure, but why? It's so much easier and it's so much better to do it in Google Analytics. So just do Google Analytics.
Okay, there we go. Short and sharp. Thank you very much. Okay, Question for you from Nadine. So, question for you, Krystal, from Nadine. A client of mine sells luxury wedding cakes in a specific area. Her customers would search for luxury wedding cake plus a town. How would they be able to rank for 10 to 15 different towns?
Yeah, I think this is going to really go back to Greg's guidance on page content. Like, you're going to physically rank your Google My Business profile where that address is. It's going to be hard for you to compete in other areas based on competition and a lot of other factors, but it's possible with a really good on-page strategy, with really great on-page content, unique content. But the most important thing is to make sure she is ranking for all the luxury wedding cake queries, as well as other cake related queries in her physical town first, and then prioritize and focus on other towns. If there are 10 to 15 other towns, which ones maybe have the least competition, and test with those, because attacking probably 10 to 15 towns at once is going to be quite hard, and you want to get the recipe right about what works from your on-page strategy. But this is definitely going to be one where you're going to need to build out some on-page content.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I get a question for Greg. One of our clients are auto repair shops. Many want to add Ford dealer, Honda dealer, etc. to their categories. Is this helpful or hurtful?
Yeah, as an auto repair shop, that would be not helpful. If you are not a dealership, you can't put Ford dealer as a category. Now, can you? Sure, but you're not. And there, so Darren Shaw and I have been talking about for years, trying to do some sort of a study, and he's done a couple, but they weren't really statistically relevant. But we all have this assumption that if you choose categories that don't at all match what you actually are, then that can cause some problems with Google. It just confuses. Does it mean you don't show up at all? No, but does it mean you're not showing up as well as you could? Probably, likely. Darren did a test one time where he just has a test listing and he changed the name to something completely different, or changed the category to something completely different. And did he show up for that new category? And no, he didn't. So it doesn't make sense to say that you're a Ford dealer or a Honda dealer if you're an auto repair shop. Same thing. A lot of times lately, we've seen car dealers that put chauffeur service as a category on their Google profile. That doesn't make sense. You're not a chauffeur service. I don't know why people would do that. Always only choose the categories that match what you actually do.
Okay, great. Final question. Come to you, Krystal. This comes from Pam. She says, my client owns several sober living homes in an area, which maybe in our language is like sort of halfway house, people who are sort of recovering from alcoholism. They want to have a GBV profile, but don't really qualify as an SAB. They definitely don't want to have their address published because of resident confidentiality, and they don't want prospects just showing up. So what do you suggest that they do in terms of setting up their GBV profiles correctly?
So this is going to be similar to like apartments as well as like Airbnb rental properties, where technically they'll qualify if they have an office at that location. So if they don't have an office at that, physical location, if they have an office nearby in town, they can use that and either display the address at the office or choose to make it a service area business if they want to direct people to phone in or visit a website to book an appointment or something like that. But the listing should be tied to wherever the office is located, not the place where people are going to stay or visit. And it's very similar for apartment communities as well.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you. That's all right. I think I must have misunderstood exactly how those sober living sort of homes work.
They can actually hide their address, though. A lot of sober living facilities do set it up as a service business because of the fact they don't want the address showing and people to freak out that there is a sober living house next door or whatever it would be. So most of them typically will hide their address.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We've overrun, but we'll leave it there. But a huge thanks to the two of you. That was great. That was rapid fire. We've covered so much ground in 90 minutes. You've done a spectacular job of sharing your knowledge, going deep in some of the answers, being very, very tactical. I think people have taken away an awful amount of insight from this particular webinar. So we'll let everyone get back to their busy days. We've had over 90 minutes of your time. If you've got another 90 minutes to spare, do jump over and do Greg's Academy course on BrightLocal. We will have another webinar for you in around a month's time. So please look out for any prompts for that. And just final thing is to say huge thanks to Greg and Krystal, and I hope you'll come back and join us on another webinar very soon.
Of course, thanks for
having
us.
Okay, and a huge thanks to Claire as well for all the work she's done in the chat. Great for everyone who came and who hung on. Thank you for your fantastic questions, and we'll see you very soon. All the best. Have a great day. Bye.